rolling. Look at that.
Rolling.
How you doing?
Finally. Yeah,
I
good.
know. It's like, when did we try and do it? June last
Was
year,
it?
was it
Oh
maybe?
my
I think
gosh.
I think it, I think it was because I was definitely in the shed and it was a really hot day, I remember.
Yeah, and
And
then
it
it
was
all
like
went wrong, didn't it? We
first
we must have been
first
a couple of
lockdown.
hours we spent, didn't we?
Do you know what? That's the only time it's ever happened to me.
No
Like
way.
I've lost one, which was my fault with a I think you probably know James Stenterford, a friend of mine.
Oh yeah.
Basically did the interview, and that was just like face to face with with the mics, and like got home and was like, oh god, I've lost it. But
Oh
yeah,
no.
so it was funny because I've just been going back through the notes that I made last year.
Oh
I was like,
really? Yeah,
yeah,
because we
god,
didn't do it on
we
video, did we?
no, but I was like, wow, we did a whole episode like already. Are you
Yeah,
getting
we
the shot?
yeah. I kind of want to hide my video so I don't keep it distracts me being able to see my own face. You like keep checking your hair and stuff.
Yeah, it's quite bad that, isn't it? You sort of
I don't
find
know if
yourself like
I
looking.
don't know if you can hide it.
Yeah, you might
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
stick
because
with
that's the
that.
beauty of podcasts. You don't have to. You can be in your pajamas, but you've just changed the game with this.
I know. Well, I mean, since the option became really easy, I've been a bit like, well, I might as well do it really. Because originally I was
Yeah,
quite. I just thought, you know what, I can't be fucked with video because it's such a load of hassle, and it's going to be, you
yeah. How
know,
would you do it? Yeah,
to then like edit it all and all that. But now that there's like these new platforms that make it really easy, I've been a bit like, I'll give it a go. But we can, yeah, we'll see how we get on.
yeah,
But
yeah. Hopefully, we
so
can talk about some good things because the last one was good, but I can't remember what we said. So,
well, it's funny because, like I say, so I just went through like the notes that I had from it, and I mean, you were still in the thick of the Achilles sort of recovery back then, so
yeah,
like quite a lot of the conversation was around that really, because I think at that point you were probably about a year in maybe to
yeah,
recovery.
yeah, yeah. It was about June, I think, July. I kind of still feel like I'm in the thick of it because I,
Really?
I can't really manage to keep much muscle onto my leg since the Achilles rupture. But I guess we should just start again, shouldn't we? Really from the top.
Yeah. Well, this is it. This it's happening.
No one will
Yeah.
know what
So let's
we're
start.
talking about.
Let's start with that. So how? Yeah. So last summer we spoke. You were a year in. And I think it's fair to say you were really open about the fact that you were mentally finding it really challenging. Um, like how long it was taking and how, like, I think it had taken you by surprise almost, like the kind of actually like, wow, this is like a proper long haul with this injury.
Yeah,
But like nearly a year later, you're still getting over it basically. So how's that?
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's probably way longer than a year. It's sort of mid-season, mid-race season, 2019. I was winning the World Cups. I just won two World Cups, and it was just another good year. And then I just had a bit of a freak accident, snapped my Achilles tendon, and that was like everyone was like, "Oh, it's a bad injury. It will take a long time." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what they always say." I've had a lot of injuries, and you always rush to come back quick. And this time it was like, no, you can't rush it. You've got to let it heal. And yeah, it took so long just to be walking again, really, um, and then so long just to be back on the bike. And the rehab took a long time, and then kind of went into lockdown, and all the gyms closed and stuff. So I kind of lost the motivation to keep rehabbing a bit. And since then, it's just been a bit of a struggle to keep the muscle on. It's fine. I mean, I've been riding and sending everything and taking big hits, and it's fine. I think it's always going to be a bit smaller than the other leg, but it's just a classic motivation equals results. And it's been difficult to have enough motivation really for this injury the whole time.
And how's your confidence then when you've been riding? Has it affected it?
Um, yeah, I mean, when I first started riding, after I think I was on off. on crutches for about about 7, 8 months, and then started walking about 9 months, and then slowly back on the bike. And you just kind of take it really slow because you don't want to risk it happening again. Full rupture was pretty horrific, so it definitely took a long time to get the confidence back. And um, you just you just got to take it easy. But the fun definitely ends up winning of riding and being on the bike. The fun takes over the fear at some point, and suddenly you're back to normal again.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
muscle thing that that you described then. So is that like a common thing with this injury that it actually, because you almost sounded then like you were kind of resigned to the fact that it might never be as strong as the other one.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Is
I
that
kind
just
of
a kind of a side product of it? Is that just what happens with this injury?
Yeah, well, I feel like all my injuries, I've had so many shoulder dislocations, nerve grafts, bone grafts, so many injuries, breaks, and all of it. And they're never quite the same. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's stronger than the other side now," but not in my experience. There's always so much damage and scar tissue, and it's always worse, and it's always carrying that injury forever. So I kind of feel like it's the same with my leg and my ankle. It's always going to be a problem point, and be a bit sore and a bit weaker than the other side. I think with an Achilles rupture, because the tendon itself, you know, comes apart and you have it repaired, and I think it's slightly longer, so you don't have as much kind of spring almost in the muscle because it's always slightly longer. So I feel like it's just a bit weaker. And but I mean, it's just joining the rest of my body now and being absolutely ruined, so it's kind of
Yeah.
catching up.
Y- Yeah, because I think that was one of the things I found quite interesting when we spoke last year, like how frank you are about how your self-esteem is linked to your ability to ride your bike, and
Yeah, for sure.
that sounded like one of the thing that, as you mentioned, you like the shoulder, the accident that you had, that process sounded really grueling. Yeah, like you say, it's part and parcel for what you do for a living, isn't it? You're going to get hurt, you're going to have to sort of go through that. But it sounded like with this one, it had almost taken even you by surprise, given the experience that you've got with like recovering from injury and listening to your body, which I think is something that I'd be quite interested in chatting about as well. Because it sounds
Yeah.
like your experience, you've got really, really good at understanding your own body, like understanding what you need for certain situations. But in this case, with this injury, I was really struck by the fact that it had quite taken you by surprise almost, like how mentally difficult it had been, and how linked that was to kind of this self identity as you as a bike rider basically.
Yeah, and I think you, you kind of, I don't know, maybe as an athlete, I've developed certain weak points, over the years, and my shoulders are always a weak point. I've had dislocations since I was a youngster, and my whole career it's been a battle of managing the injuries that inevitably come when you're, you know, pushing for the top step in any sport and hurtling down the mountain on a bike. So there's always an injury coming. It might be in a year, it might be 3 years, but you know that it doesn't matter how good you are and how strong you are, you've got a finite amount of time until the next injury. And for me, it was always shoulders really, and upper body based. So it was kind of, my legs were always my strong point. They were always my strongest thing. And I'm a super powerful athlete, and then to suddenly injure the one thing that's always been okay, it was a bit of a disappointment, really. You know, and any injury, you kind of go through a process, almost like grief. Really, you have to go through the steps and process it in the right way, and you can't really miss any steps. And it's kind of, yeah, it definitely knocks your confidence, but more than that, it takes you away from doing the thing you love and the thing that makes you into you as a person. And as an athlete, you really are, you're sure that your whole self-worth and you as a person is linked to what you do. And so suddenly when you don't do that anymore, you just sat round with your leg in the air watching TV, or you know you suddenly question everything, like, who am I, what do I even enjoy doing, what does my day routine look like without training and racing? And it's always a massive kind of mental hurdle to overcome with any injury. But I think for me, this one just came at sort of a point in my career where maybe I was kind of starting to question, who I was and what I was doing. I've had 15 years at the top winning, and I've had so many good results. Years have been undefeated, and some massive injuries in there as well. And then I'm sort of it was there was a lot of change that year. We launched Atherton bikes, and we kind of everyone was expecting me to slow down and stop winning, and it was just a real kind of everything just all happened at once, really. So it was definitely a tough period to get through mentally, but it teaches you, if you can learn something from every single experience, whether it's a good or a bad experience, then you're gonna come out better equipped at the end of it.
Can you get, have you found that you've got better at that dealing with that mental side of it because of injuries? Because obviously, like you're saying, you hear professional athletes at the top level talk about this a lot. Like this, I use the word grief, which is really interesting. I've certainly heard people in your position like use that word, like like footballers, like people that
Yeah.
suffer like really
Well,
serious
yeah.
injuries that take them away from the thing that they love or whatever.
Yeah.
And like I said, this I this I what I really found fascinating when we've spoken before is how much you want to learn about from your own experience. I know that sounds like a very obvious thing to say, but like, you really seem to use these experiences as fuel and to like, when it happens again, be like, okay, well, what can I learn from that and how can I take that into this approach?
Yeah.
So have you found that in the same way physically you've learned what works for you, mentally you've got better at that, you've been able to kind of assimilate those experiences and put them into a positive outcome? Has that,
Yeah.
is that something you've also consciously worked on in the same way that you've worked on the physical side of things?
Yeah, for sure. Because, at the end of the day, all I want to do is win races. And when I don't win for whatever reason, it's so painful, and it hurts, inside, and it stays with you for a long time. And the only question you have after a race is, how can I be better? How can I be better next time? How can I be faster? How can I be mentally better than the others? How can I be stronger? And that kind of mindset runs through everything in life. Every single aspect of your life is questioned and analyzed, and I can't do anything without thinking up the pros and cons of, even if it's just going for a meal or going somewhere for the day. There's so many things that could affect. There's so many influences that could have on my racing, and so being injured is no different. It's a step down from winning, I suppose. When you win, you can learn a lot because you've performed really well despite the things you've done wrong. And when you're injured, you made a mistake or something went wrong to pick up that injury, and you've got time to analyze it, and you have to be able to learn something from the injury. Is the only way you can get through it, really, because otherwise you just sat there thinking, all those years of training have gone, all the months of hard work gone. The other competitors are just steaming ahead, and I'm being left behind. So if you can really analyze it and take something that's going to help you somewhere, and I've had so many injuries that I've had to do it a lot, so you kind of don't really have a choice but to, after you've been angry and upset and gone through that process, to come to a point where you're like, right, okay, I'm gonna learn something about myself or about the situation. And for me, at this injury, at this point in my career, which I suppose not in a bad way, I'm the oldest racer, and I've done everything I could possibly do in the sport. So it's more now a case of thinking, okay, I'm gonna respect my body for what it's allowed me to do up to this point, rather than a few years ago it was win at any cost. I don't care if I get
Yeah.
hurt. I just want to win. And now it's a bit more, my body's given me so much that I want to respect it so that we can keep going, I suppose.
Yeah, you put a really interesting post up on Instagram some last year about 2018. and like
Ah, the good old days.
how you approached that. And it was really fascinating. I don't know if you can recall what I'm talking about, but you were talking about how, and it's something we also talked about previously, like the preparation that you did was so thorough, and so like you were so on top of every element, every variable. It felt like that when it came to racing, it was almost like a different experience, because you'd set yourself up in this position where you could almost rise above the stress that previously might have been there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is that, and I found that really fascinating, because it sounds like, again, that's been a progression through your career. Like when you were younger, you would approach racing in a certain way,
Mm.
and as experience has kicked in, and you've kind of understood what works for you, and you've understood a word that springs to mind is control, because obviously you need to control these different
Yeah.
influences and variables, like to give you the best chance of performing. Like, and it kind of sounds like it's all part of the same process. This, like I say, this kind of analyzing, like, well, what do I need to give my body, like to give my mental state, to give me the best chance of winning. So I guess the question would be, can you look back over your career and see like an evolution in that approach, and in the way you try and control those variables?
Yeah, definitely. And I can look back, and you have the most growth um, after a big challenge. So whether that's an injury or an illness or whatever it is, it's always, my career's gone like winning, big injury or something happens, right down again. Then you climb up, winning again, and then straight back down. So it's it's definitely the best way to learn, through hardships or through challenges, or it's definitely the best way to progress. It's the hardest way and the most stressful way, but I think that's why I've always, I don't really believe in like a positive mental attitude. It's always been something people talk about, you've got to be positive, you've got to imagine the outcome, and I'm completely the opposite. I just imagine the worst happening all the time, and then I really just bring my A game every time, because I'm so doubtful and so fearful that I'm not going to perform or something's going to go wrong, that you know I'm so convinced that I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be able to be the best, that I really make sure that I bring every single bit of knowledge and experience to the table, and then you end up performing the best because you're focused and you're concentrating, and I think if you don't analyze everything, and if you don't make those tiny little incremental gains in every aspect of your life, you when you don't win or you don't succeed, you've only got yourself to blame, really. And there's nothing worse than not reaching the goal you set out to reach, or after the race or after the event thinking, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. There's nothing worse than that feeling. So for me, it was like, I literally can't cope with not winning. So if I'm going to keep racing, then I need to make sure as much as I can that I can win, because I can't handle the emotional fallout of not winning. So yeah, it's a pretty stressful way to live, really. It's a pretty stressful
Yeah,
environment to be in.
yeah, and it leads me to a question, because that's really fascinating that you
I mean,
talk
it
about
sounds
that.
stupid and a bit embarrassing when I say it like that, because I mean, it's only racing, it's only bike racing, it's sport at the end of the day. But it's your life, and it sounds kind of silly to put so much into it, but I guess that's the whole point of life, is to have that feeling of about something. So
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's silly. I think that's why people love sport, isn't it? And I think that's why people live vicariously through somebody like yourself. Like, that's why people love following all sport, because they can see that,
yeah.
they can see what you're putting into it. And it's not something that everybody can do, very obvious thing to say. So people really respond to it. So I don't think it's stupid at all. But what I was going to say is that negative visualization, if I can call it that you just described,
Yeah.
is really interesting, because, like you say, usually And I think anybody who rides a bike or who skis or who snowboards will know this. Like usually it's like, well, if you want to do something, it's positive visualization. Is like, imagine yourself doing it, and yeah, we all know that thing. So
Yeah.
this, um, you've obviously done a lot of work, I'm assuming, with like sports psychologists, and really dug into this. Was that like you recognizing that was a tendency that you had and kind of like harnessing that? Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Or
maybe.
was it,
Yeah.
or was it like this is an approach you can use to win? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, was
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I think it was more the first one really. We started working with a sports psychologist. I think I was about 19, maybe 20. Jamie Edwards, trained brain, up in Manchester, and that was we were like sponsored by Red Bull, and we were like, how do we get better? We want to be better. We need to improve, and that was a huge step, working on the mental side. And I think probably one of the reasons why I've been so successful in my career is the mental strength, or lack of mental strength. No, you have to have mental strength, but yeah, I know what you mean. I think I'm working on a project at the moment for a film that will come out at the end of this year, and I've been reading through all my race diaries, all my old diaries, and it's mad. I've been reading through, say, a winter's training, and it's like so negative. Like, I'm not doing enough. I need to train more. I need to do this more. And like, there's no way this season's going to go well. Like, what am I thinking every day? I'm not doing enough. That's the whole winter's theme. And then first race, I won. Second race, I won.
right?
And I was like, that's mad, because you would read it and think, yeah, sure, like she's not in a good place. She's obviously not training well and stuff. But I don't think, I don't know, you have to know yourself. So I say to people that want advice or some tips, mental visualization is really important, and I use it to ride down the track and physically do what I'm about to do in my head. But I don't so much visualize winning, because what we talked about. I think it's almost more helpful to visualize the losing or something going wrong, and how you feel and what you could do to change that, so you bring your A game. But um it's for me, it's more like, I don't know. It's more the evidence. So once you've, but you need to have done something for a while, so you have that evidence to look back on. So after a couple of years, I have the evidence that I can win, because I did it last year. I did it the year before. I did it last week. So it's more factual than visualization. You wouldn't, if you rolled up to World Cup and tried to race and win, it just wouldn't happen. The evidence isn't there to suggest you can do it. But if you've done British races and you've done some World Cups and qualified well, then the evidence is stacking up in your favour, I suppose. So it's kind of more factual than visualization, because you can visualize all you want, but if you're not strong enough, if you're not fit enough, and you haven't got the right equipment, it's not going to happen. So it's more like based on what you've actually done to achieve that goal.
I mean, it's almost like you're giving yourself permission to win, right? Like
Yeah,
you're kind of stacking it up, it mentally, by the prep,
yeah,
by the way you
exactly.
try and
You think, well,
control.
yeah, you've done a PB in the gym, I've trained more hours than I've trained the year previous, or stuff like that. And there's the evidence that you're probably going to be better than you were last time.
So, did you always have that,
Or not
or
if you haven't
uh,
done the work.
yeah, yeah? So, like when you were younger, did you have to learn this, or was it something that you kind of
Yeah,
instinctively
well,
knew?
I think it came from the injuries, really. When I was younger, I got so many injuries that I would be absolutely flat out at the races, 100% commitment, just win at all costs. I was really confident in my ability, and my skill level was there for sure, but the rest of it wasn't there. And so then when I'd get injured, I'd be like, why did I get injured? Why am I out again? Why is this happening to me? And it was kind of like a necessity, really, to learn things to stop that happening, I suppose. I think I went through like 5 years of having surgery at the end of every season, And it just got to the point where I was like, okay, this isn't working. Obviously, my approach
Yeah.
is not working. So I need to change something and learn from what's happening instead of just blindly repeating the same mistakes and hoping for a different outcome.
And what did that look like then? What did you change?
Well, I suppose it's just a natural progression, really, of any athlete or really any person that's trying to improve. You you have to learn something. So I kind of made small things like keeping a diary, and whether a race went well or badly, making notes of what you did good and bad. So even if you won, the you could still I could still write 5 things that I did really badly, and sometimes the winning races were more allowed me to learn more because there's more kind of the races that went well, you have to learn stuff from. All the if you're not an athlete, the times that you've been in a good place, you should still be learning from and still keeping that kind of tab on what you're doing to so you can keep doing it, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a good point to talk about your recent news then, really. Congratulations, firstly,
Thank you.
you know. Yeah. But
Baby.
yeah, I mean it's so what are you 4 months, is it now?
um yeah, nearly 5, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
nearly
Yeah.
5 months. So nearly halfway through, really, which is mad because it kind of takes so long to get used to. That suddenly you're nearly there, and it's a weird, yeah, weird time.
Yeah, I found your pink bike piece really, really interesting about
Oh,
that
cool.
because it is quite fascinating, isn't it? You talked quite openly about the fact that there's not many you can't really think of many peers to kind of draw from, who have been
Yeah,
in your position. And because naturally, I guess that's the question. When you've defined yourself by your career for so long and you're racing, like has this changed the way that you're looking at your career? Because I guess, like, if a bloke's going to become a father, it's quite like, oh yeah, well that's that. I'm going to carry on with what I'm doing. But it is like,
yeah,
clearly very different for women, and
yeah,
for it's still almost like worthy of comment when a professional woman decides to become a professional sportswoman decides to
yeah,
become a mother, isn't it? It's almost like, wow, they're going to have a baby and still try and have a career at the top of their
yeah. I
sport.
didn't know whether to make a big deal about it because, or just to not make a big deal about it because, like you say, it shouldn't be something that's so like you can comment so much on. But I decided, like you said, I struggled in those early weeks and months to find many people in my sort of industry, really in my environment, many women to feed off and to look to for how did they do it. The women that have raced before me and that have had children have kept it quite quiet, really, which is fair enough. It's totally up to them, but I didn't feel like that was particularly helpful to me in this situation now. And I feel like I've always have a bit of a responsibility, I suppose, to do something that's helpful for people. So
Right.
maybe showing my journey and being so open about it will help the racers in 10 or 15 years time behind me that go through this sort of same thing, when they're a bit older. So yeah, I decided that I wanted to be open about it, and it's interesting and exciting, and I wanted it to be a positive thing. Like you say, it's such a newsworthy story when a female athlete becomes pregnant or a mum, because you can't really keep on the same trajectory. Things do change whether you like it or not, and whether it's fair or not. We aren't the same as men. We're not equal to men. We never will be. We're just different, and a woman has the honor of being a mother, and that inevitably changes the way you approach your career. It doesn't make it a negative thing, and I don't want it to be a negative thing. So I'm keen to, I say this now, but when it's here and I'm exhausted, it'll be a different story. But I'm keen to just do what I can to to keep going in the same direction, really, and kind of show that it's not a bad thing, and that it is interesting to people out there.
Is that why in that conversation for Pink Bike you, because it sounded like you had doubts about whether to kind of, talk about it on social, and like how, almost like how open to be about it? Was that why? Because you were, I guess it's a conundrum, right?
Well,
Isn't
it's
it? It's like
just
the more
terrifying,
you,
isn't it, really? Yeah. Anything you
well,
put on
social
social
generally,
media
yeah.
is just, yeah, yeah, exactly.
Well, especially when you got as many followers as you have, it's like, it's a lot of people in it. So,
Yeah.
but equally, you don't want to. It's funny, isn't it? Because the more you kind of talk about it in these terms, it's almost like the more you fuel this idea that it's unusual. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but
Yeah.
equally,
Yeah.
but equally, it takes people like yourself, I think, to kind of normalize it,
Yeah, by not
to
talking
change.
about it, it's keeping it, it's kind of saying it is a bit of like a negative thing, and we
Yeah,
don't really want it in the industry. So yeah, it was definitely a hard decision, or not hard, but I didn't know what to do. And like you say, social media and the internet generally is a terrifying place, and I didn't know whether I was doing the right thing by talking about it, or would I be strung up and, you know, for riding whilst pregnant, or I just didn't want to, I just didn't want any bad things. And I guess being on the internet is it's a potential that you're gonna have people say things or disagree with you, I suppose. So you just have to definitely be thick skinned, and that's something that I've developed over the years, is trying to be less bothered by what you read, and know that you're, in your heart, you're doing the right thing.
yeah. Because
But
I
since
remember.
I talked about it, there's I've been absolutely just blown away, really, and so, I mean, I always am, like, so moved and touched by the messages people send after races, and just, it's just mind blowing, really, that it means so much to people, and that they get so involved in racing, and they find inspiration in it. And you know, I've met a girl at the race, and she brought me some earrings because the year previously I said to her, I like your earrings. And it was so sweet. And I kind of, since I've talked about the pregnancy, so many women have reached out saying, thanks for talking about it. I've been through the same journey on the mountain bike, and didn't know what to do. Should I be riding? Should I be not riding? Or, and they feel like someone said she feels like she's seen now as a mother or a pregnant mountain biker, and she feels like she's got a voice. And it's so special to be able to kind of unite those people. So yeah, I feel honored, really.
I mean, that's great, isn't it? That's when social media can have a really positive outcome,
Yeah.
and clearly that's some of the responsibility you've sort of felt. Because I guess there's a couple of things to say. It's almost like a two-part question. The first part would be, it's already quite a mental challenge you've got ahead of you, like, because you're gonna have to work out how to kind of balance motherhood and your career. Let's just put it that way, which I presume for you is something that I'd be interested in talking to you about, like, especially given how we mentioned earlier that you've said that your self-identity is really wrapped up with you as a bike rider,
Mm.
so you've already got that going on personally, but then like, you've also got this thing because of your position that you feel this responsibility to talk about it publicly, like, which must be quite stressful to have to think about that as well.
Yeah, if you think about it too much, it is really stressful. And for example, in lockdown, the first lockdown, I was bored, just coming back from injury. So I started a YouTube channel, and it was really good fun. And I absolutely loved it the first couple of months, just doing videos of what I was doing, and really excited by it, and getting good feedback and interaction with people. And then I started thinking about it too much, and like, oh, is the house too messy? Am I influencery enough? Or, and then I just totally lost my head over it, and I stopped doing it because it wasn't,
Right.
I didn't enjoy it anymore. And I want to start doing it again, sorry, but
It's all right.
I don't want the same thing to happen. I don't want to feel like, when, I'm best when I'm just me and I'm honest. And sometimes
Yeah.
that gets people's, interest. And inspires people, and sometimes no one cares at all what I've said or what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep going, if basically do, do sponsors only care about likes and views, and it's hard to just keep being honest and being yourself if you're chasing those likes and views. At the end of the day, that's what social media is. So that's what really has struck me in these first few months of being pregnant, is that really all I want to do is be honest. And if people want to know, then cool. And if they don't, then whatever. So that's the only thing you can do, I think.
Well, you need to balance it, don't you? You need to make sure it serves you rather than you start trying to serve it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's
it's funny,
terrifying,
like,
because mountain biking is such a male industry, and, you know, 15% of my Instagram followers are women and the rest are men. And so it's terrifying to think, am I going to just become this completely uninteresting, you know, boring woman that's just muttering on about breastfeeding, and or is it going to be anything interesting to anyone? But you can't. You just got to do what you do, and see what happens, I suppose.
yeah, and like you say, you got to keep it true to yourself, haven't you? Which
Yeah.
is really, really, really challenging. It's like trivial example, but when I did the first video on here, I got a couple of comments that people were like, "Oh, you might want to sort your backdrop out, mate. You might want
Oh
to sort
God.
your," and I was a bit like,
Yeah, exactly.
"Fuck." But I was
Yeah.
just a bit like, I mean, if I actually start doing that, then it's kind of mad, isn't it? If you're like,
Yeah. Like
"All
that's
right,
main.
well, I bet."
Like we live in a rented old farmhouse. It's horrific. There's not one wall that looks any good, and you think, is it? Oh, you just got to get over it. Everyone lives their own life, and people don't live, you know, in Instagram photos, do they? So
No, no, exactly. But I think you spoke to me before about the fact that you, as a woman, you definitely found social media to be a challenging place for your mental health. Like, is that still something that you feel?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's just, sometimes I wish that I did a sport that was a bit more naturally sexy, because you can surf in a bikini and swimwear, and that's what you wear for surfing, and it looks cool, and like it looks sexy, and basically sex sells. But mountain biking, you're fully covered head to toe, you've got a full face helmet on. It's not in the least bit like sexy, really. And it's kind of like, so then you kind of feel like, who am I? Like, who do I choose to be? Which path do I choose to go down? Because like the last time I wore a bikini and took a photo was literally on holiday about 5 years ago. And I'm just saying, like, I'm just using the bikini as an example of, that sex basically sells. We're all humans and we're animals basically. And I think it's hard not to be sucked into that, because other things sell. Other things are important for careers and jobs and stuff. But it's hard not to feel like that's what you should go down, to be more of a sponsor's dream, I suppose. And it is definitely a kind of a challenging place, because every now and again you think, am I this enough, or am I that enough? And then you think, you've just got to be you. And I always tried to be so good at racing, and so good at the race results, that the other stuff didn't matter as much.
I
Well, that
find
was what was
personally,
important to me, I suppose. Racing, and the winning was the only thing that mattered to me.
yeah. What I was going to say is like on the social thing and the self perception thing that you're talking about, I just find I have good and bad days with that. Sometimes you just don't give it any thought, but then other times, I think anyone in the world who's interacting with the world on these platforms will think about that for
Yeah.
sure. I also think
Yeah,
it's
some days
really,
it's just like a really great place to, like we were saying about connecting with people and finding
yeah,
inspiration and good stories. And it's just an amazing place to, you feel so, stoked to be interacting with people. And then other times it's just a bad place where it leaves you feeling worse about yourself, or that your life's not as good as someone else's. And sometimes I'm like, why do we live in the UK? You see all the photos from New Zealand or Hawaii, and I'm like, what are we doing,
especially
wasting our lives here?
especially now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, why are we here locked down again on Plague
Yeah,
Island? Yeah,
yeah,
no, I know what you mean. I think it's also, but really good for people to remember that like everybody's affected in that way though,
yeah, yeah. I think
because
it's important, isn't it?
I think there's an assumption that if you look at somebody like yourself, who's obviously like really been successful in their field and has a big audience and all those things, like those outward sort of symbols of success,
Yeah,
that they actually don't really mean anything unless you know, cheesy as it sounds, if you feel happy within yourself, and I think everybody has that struggle, no matter what
yeah,
position they're in, no matter what profile they've got,
yeah,
no matter how many
100%.
followers
Yeah,
they've got. Everybody's basically going through that same inner dialogue of like,
mm.
am I doing the right thing? Am I presenting myself in the right way?
Yeah,
And I think
and that was one of the interesting things about racing, and for me, winning and some of the results. Don't get me wrong, it's amazing winning, and it's what you want to do, and but what interested me was how lonely, or yeah, lonely, I suppose, I felt after wins and after winning big races. You work so hard towards it, you put everything into it, you sacrifice whatever you give up, and you win the race, and you feel like unreal for about 10 minutes, maybe 5. And then you suddenly realize that what difference has it made? Like, my partner's still at home, he's not here, you know, the other competitors, you're a bit out on your own, you've beaten them all and they don't really like you for now. And it's a weird feeling to realize that the one goal you've been chasing for so long is actually not as good as you imagined it to be. And that's why I think it's so important to realize that real life is what the ultimate kind of goal is, really, to be
yeah,
connected to people, to have relationships in real life, to have a partner, friends, family. Winning races or being successful in your job allows you to enjoy maybe more things, but ultimately it doesn't bring you closeness, or it it's not it's a lonely place to be, really, at the top, because there's only room for one. So for me, that was a massive learning, to realize that if I could be happy in my home life and happy at home, then it didn't matter as much what happened at the races, because it didn't define me as much. When I realized that Ollie, my partner, loved me whether I won or lost the race, that was huge. And ultimately it actually helped me perform better, and I won more races since being with him and being happier at home, because you have something else that validates you as a person, and it's not all about that one race result. You still are a good person at home. You still have a life outside of it, I suppose, which is, yeah, important.
when you slotted that piece of the puzzle in place, um, did it affect how you felt about your victories subsequently? Did it change the feeling?
Yeah, I felt more, uh, um I suppose I kind of almost put more into the races, because I knew it how it affected us as a couple, or I knew what a nightmare I was the weeks leading up to a big race. And so I didn't want all that to go to waste. So I almost put more effort into the races, because it was my chance to be me, or be Rachel Atherton, and then I could go home and share it with Ollie and my friends and family. And it kind of it almost gave both identities um, more opportunity to be the best version of themselves, rather than it all been blurred together and been blurred into one. But I think if you'd have asked me this, like, when I was a lot younger, I think I would have. I think it's totally different when you're younger, because when you're younger and on the way, and sort of on those first steps of whether you're trying to be a professional athlete or successful in your business, whatever, you kind of have to have that single-mindedness to, because there isn't really room for anything else in those early days. You don't really have any room because you're learning so much and you have to learn so much and so quickly to be the best. You have to progress all the time. There's not really space for chilling out and not, with your partner or going on holiday and stuff. That only comes later once you've learned as much as possible in those first few years. Then you've got a bit more space to kind of fit in life. But I was very much, and I still think that the best way to be the best is to have that as your only option, the only thing.
Yeah.
It annoys me when people have a plan B, because I think, well, you're not going to put every ounce
You're
and
not fully
more into
committed.
plan A if you've got a plan B. Yeah, it kind of feels a bit silly, really. A bit like a mixed
It's re-
messaging to yourself.
yeah, it's really interesting that you say that. That idea that, this arc of your career where you have like, when you're younger, you have like this single-minded focus that's necessary, but then as you get older, you have to learn how to balance that with life, essentially. As your
Yeah,
personal interior world, if you like, changes.
yeah,
I never really thought of it in those terms before. I wonder if that explains like why, because what a really common phenomenon in sport is the prodigy who just sort of fizzles out quite early, isn't it?
yeah,
Like
yeah, for
you
sure.
get kids that come up and they when that's all they've got, presumably they like achieve this like huge success, and but then they quite often don't fulfill long-term potential. It's not a guarantee, is it, that that person will
Mm,
have like a really successful career. And I
yeah,
almost
yeah,
wonder if it's linked to that thing you were saying earlier about, which I completely recognize even on my little level, about how when you achieve those goals, there can be like a flatness and a hollowness
mm,
afterwards that's a bit weird, isn't it?
yeah.
You
It's
know, it's
weird. Yeah,
it's a bit of you're a bit like, what? That's it. That's all I feel when I've achieved this thing that I really wanted to achieve.
yeah, yeah. You've been waiting for it for
It's
so long, and you're like, is that it? And then I suppose it then it's important to spread out and think, okay, I need other things now to to make me happy, or to fulfill me in a different way. I'm still going to be on this path. So maybe that young kind of prodigy, if you don't expand, if you stay, you do get burnt out. And it happened to me, years ago. And I was like, right, well, I've won a few world champs, I've, I'm over it. Like, I can't. The training is killing me. I'm unhappy. I don't have any friends. Like, I'm just. What's the point? What is this life? What's it all for? And you have to make choices to go after happiness. And that was when I moved to Wales, and then I met Ollie, and it was all great after that. But I had to make some hard decisions over that year or two about what I wanted my life to look like outside of racing, because it wasn't enough anymore. I'd achieved what my goals. I was at the top. I'd won races, blah blah blah. And then it wasn't enough anymore. I wanted more. So you have to keep changing all the time and keep listening to what you actually want, and and
yeah,
that might just be simple things like, after 10 years of traveling away for winter training, I suddenly wanted to stay at home all winter in the rain and the snow and mud. And that was like so cool and exciting. And I really buzzed off it. And then I had like a new happiness, and I carried on winning. So I guess it's that thing of, if you do the same thing and expect a different outcome, then that's insanity. So yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting.
One of the definitions of madness, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That that brings me to a quote that I did actually pull. I'm just looking it up. I just pulled it out of the pink bike thing because it really stood out. So you were talking about riding your bike while you during your pregnancy, and you said, and surprisingly to me, I was totally okay with not riding my fastest or at my best. Um,
Mm,
which I thought was really interesting because again, it's that's about that kind of self identity thing, isn't it?
mm,
So and I also, we talked before about your relationship with your brothers, and how essentially like when you were young, you were really, really trying to keep up with them. And that was like a huge driver of like where your own personal drive and ambition came from
Yeah, yeah,
to an
definitely.
extent. So like your whole life, you've like you've wanted to be the fastest, you've wanted to be the best, and now that you can't do that for very obvious reasons, but it sounds like you're quite reconciled with that. It sounds like you're quite happy and quite looking forward to this almost new relationship with your bike that this is going to
Yeah,
give you.
yeah, and maybe it came off the back of being injured and recovering for so long. You know, you kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit, and you have to, when you're recovering from an injury, you have to put the injury first. You know, yeah, I'd love to send that big jump right now, but I'm not ready. And that kind of taught me a lot of self kind of discipline, I suppose, or and and like you say, a kind of uh, confidence in yourself that isn't just related to what you're doing exactly in that moment. So yeah, being pregnant and those early months when we weren't telling anyone, but I was still riding, and I was like, oh, I'll just walk down this bit, and all the guys are like, what is she doing? I was like, I just don't fancy it today, you know, don't feel like it. And to start with, it did annoy me, you know, I wanted to ride while I still could, you know, and didn't have a baby. But you quickly realise that it's not, it's about a bigger thing now, and it's nice to think about the bigger picture, you know, months and years ahead down the line, rather than just how can I be the best today, you know, how can I do today what's going to get me to that goal. So that's nice to kind of slow down a bit. Yeah, and it's such a grown up thing to say, isn't it? Like, it's nice to slow down and it's quite enjoyable, but it really is, you know, when you're just training and you're so full on, and and every time I rode my bike, it had to be, I had to do full runs, I had to do fast lines, I had to, and I that was how I enjoyed myself. It was stressful if I stopped and everyone was chatting and having fun. For me, it was like fast laps, being a racer, and that's what I enjoy, you know, I love it. But now it's nice to have the other side and just to be like, oh, look at the trees and look at the view, it's all nice, and it's just nice being out on the bike. And it's a total different side of life, really, which is equally as enjoyable. Well, maybe not
I
equally,
just
but
Yeah, but something else to appreciate. I
yeah.
just actually read a really interesting interview with Gigi Buffon, who's like the Italy and Juventus goalkeeper, who's like,
Oh, really?
I think he's like 44 and still playing top
No
level
way.
football.
Wow.
Anyway, like he said a quite similar thing that you know they asked him the COVID question, how was it, and he said the first month of lockdown was one of the most enjoyable months of my life, and I feel
Yeah.
really guilty saying that, and I'm aware that I'm really privileged because I've got a big house and blah blah blah. But he's like, because it's the first time in my life I had permission
Yeah.
to stop thinking about the thing that I dedicated my life to and not feel guilty about it,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
it had all been called off
Yeah.
and there was nothing I could do about it. And he said all I did was read books for a month
Yeah, and just,
and he was like it was the most relaxing. So I just thought that was so
yeah,
fascinating
yeah,
because
it's true, isn't
obviously
it? Yeah. Yeah, you don't have a choice, it's out of your hands. So you know, why not enjoy it? There's no point in stressing. Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that, didn't they? You know, that lockdown was, you couldn't work, it was legal, so just enjoy it. And
yeah
that's
the
kind of what
first
I
one
feel like now, really. Yeah, it's like it's a ticket to chilling out and just not pushing yourself to the limit and beyond, you know. And if you're tired, rest, and it's amazing.
yeah yeah. Do you think you're like the way that you've had to kind of analyze your relationship with your body and your like how your body reacts is something that you are bringing to this experience of being
um,
pregnant?
yeah, I feel very in tune with my body and aware of everything, which is good and bad, I suppose. You know, it's amazing to be so, to feel your body and be so aware of it, but it's also kind of a bit weird. You know, you can almost feel like I haven't been training as much as I was, and I can almost feel the muscle like sliding off me, which, you know, is fine. It's just what I want to do, so I've only got myself to
Yeah.
blame.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how? So is it a year now since you've had the brand Atherton? Like, is it about a year since you launched? I know it's
Uh,
coming up. It was
two
last summer,
years,
wasn't it?
yeah, yeah,
2 years. Wow, bloody hell, that's gone quick.
yeah.
Um,
19 and 20. So this is technically the third year.
right. And you just did a big funding round, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. So
recently.
we launched
Of
Atherton Bikes in January 2019, and then
wow,
yeah,
God, it's
we
2 years. God, it's gone
yeah,
so
I
fast.
know, yeah, it's mad. And what a 2 years! Like we've gone from like nothing to so much already. And for me, being able to race on the bikes and to win World Cups, I think I won two before I got hurt. That was the goal. That was like
Yeah,
the only goal that I hadn't done, and I wasn't sure if it would happen or not. So I feel like incredibly grateful to have done that before all this kicked off, like having a baby and been injured and COVID. But it's a mad time to start a business, I suppose. Everyone's kind of going through that, but we've been pretty lucky because, I mean, it's cycling, so you can kind of keep doing it around the world. Everyone's still riding, and starting Athlon Bikes is just another example of kind of the bigger the challenge, the more you focus in, and the more you work, I suppose. But I always say, like, the bigger the mountain, the higher you have to go to fly over it. So it's it's a massive, huge thing we're doing, really. But it's what motivates us, and the only way we keep going is by changing the goalpost, really, and doing something different. So yeah, we did a crowdfunding raise about 3 or 4 months ago, I think, and that went mental, so good. And to be like in a position where we could give people, we've been on such a big journey. There's obviously myself and my two brothers who race, and G and Dan have won World Cups and world champs between them. We've all done so much over 20 odd years in mountain biking, and we've done, video episodes and series behind the scenes, traveling with us for so many years. We've built up like such a support, or like we've built up so many interactions with people, I suppose, not them supporting us. It's like a two-way thing. And so to be able to give them an opportunity to come on this journey with us was amazing. That's what we wanted to do, really, to be able to say, like, come with us and be involved. And that's like, it went massive, way beyond what we hoped and imagined. So it's a massive new step, and exciting, kind of, to be 3D printing our own bikes. We additive manufacturing, that's how we produce them, and it's all done here in Wales. So we're about to have a new headquarters, and it's just going to be rad. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
and like so that keeping it interesting thing was a big part of it
Yeah, I
for
mean,
you guys.
like, I'm not going to lie, we've been doing this for so long, and we've ridden for a lot of bike companies, and over those years we've developed bikes with each of those companies, and you put your knowledge into it, you put literally your blood, sweat, and tears into developing this bike, and then they go on to have that bike for years and years, and you move on to a different brand eventually. And it just feels amazing to be doing it for our reason, and now, and for for us, and for people, rather than for some massive company that kind of just takes the expertise. And I mean, we were hugely lucky to ride for those companies, and we learnt loads. So, to have the opportunity now to build bikes our way, and put our knowledge into it is pretty rad. And we didn't want to do it like if it was just the same kind of product as other bike companies. We didn't want to go to the Far East and get a million bike frames from a factory and slap our name on it. We wanted it to be different. Kind of, we've always wanted to do things differently, not consciously, but we've always tried to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, I suppose. And so we had an opportunity to work with these engineers, and we started Atherton Bikes, and we 3D print them, additive manufacturing, which is quite really new to the mountain bike industry. So it's got potential, huge potential to be, yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, amazing. And how is it actually working in this way with your brothers? I know you've worked together for years, like obviously, like so. What is
Yeah,
it? Has it been different?
difficult. We're very
So,
argumentative.
well, especially when you're all so competitive and driven and opinionated
Yeah.
and all those things that that go part and parcel with being successful.
Yeah, it's definitely been a massive learning curve. It's totally different from running a race team or running a bike park. We're running a bike company, and it's not just us. We've got Dan Brown, who's our he started off as our team manager like 15 years ago, but now he's CEO of the bike company. And then there's a few other key, well, all the engineers and designers and stuff are partners, and then a couple of investors. So there's more than just us. So it's been a big learning curve to kind of grow out of this like family squabble eventually becomes a decision in the business. It has to be more legit, and more kind of clean cut than that. So that's been interesting to figure out the dynamics of a real business that's bigger than our race results, basically. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and is conflict a big part of that? Like, because it's kind of unavoidable, isn't it? When you try to make
Yeah.
decisions, it's quite a healthy thing, though. I think to be able to
Yeah.
when you got that level of trust that you obviously all have, you kind of can be very
Yeah.
very honest
Yeah, you can,
and
and you can't really escape. I mean, you're stuck with each other. So in that way, it's great, and we know how to work together as a team. We all have our sort of specific strengths and roles. So in that way, it's really kind of healthy, and yeah, we kind of get things done at the end of the day. And it's been tough this last year or so with the COVID situation, obviously, and but it's the same as any industry really. It's just the way it is, and you got to crack on and keep going.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I guess my final question, given that we've kind of covered the range of your career and this evolution of your career, and I'm sure you've thought about this. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, obviously you're going to be a mother. Um, Obviously you've got the bike company. You know, I'm 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 guessing there might be some unfinished business, like when it comes to racing. Like, what would be
I don't know
something
about
that
5 years. Sounds like a
you
long
know what I mean
time.
though? Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's say two. Let's say 2 years. That's the question is like how would you like to see it develop from here?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different avenues now to be excited about. Even the bike park here in North Wales, it's such an amazing venue to have, for coaching and connecting to people. Like I was saying, after all these years of them supporting us at races, I feel like I kind of want to give back, I suppose is the word, but like I want to be involved in helping people realize their potential, I suppose. And I really enjoy it, the coaching and helping other racers. But we've got the Atherton bikes, obviously that's going to change hugely in the next sort of 5 years, and hopefully we'll have an e-bike by then, and I won't have to pedal as much. But racing wise, I mean, it's impossible to say really. Like, I'm not going to be naive and say like, yeah, I'm going to come back and I'm just going to get straight back onto the top step. I know there's a huge change ahead of me, having a kid and having a baby, and even whether I want to return it's just all so unknown really. There's definitely a kind of fire inside me that wants to challenge myself to return and see how high up I can get on that podium, and to know that I've done that after having a baby. That's another challenge of life, and so I do have that sort of fire inside me for that. And then I never set out to achieve records, or even when I was having the perfect season in the middle of the year, everyone was talking whether I could win every single race, and I actually nearly did it for 2 years in the end, but 15 races I think it was. And even then, you don't really. I wasn't aware of it until after it happened. So now I'm on 39 World Cup wins, and the record is with Anne-Caroline Chasson, who's like the greatest female mountain biker. She's on 42, so it's tantalizingly close,
Yeah,
annoyingly close.
that
And
is
there's so
definitely
I just go over a lot, like how many races over my 15 years that I could have won if I'd just done this better, or if I'd just done that, or races you lose by point naught one. It's just it's but I can't say really. So I'd like to think that I can get to that 42, but then you can't get equal to it. You have to get past it. So, and then on and on it goes. So who knows? But
Yeah, exactly. Because then you'll be like, well, 50's pretty close.
yeah, yeah. Oh God.